Ready to get started here. Welcome to session number 2, breakout session of the morning. We are happy to have Eve Psalti as our speaker for this one. Eve has been a tech leader for the past 20 plus years and is currently the senior director at Microsoft's Azure AI engineering organization, responsible for scaling and commercializing the Azure AI platform portfolio. She was previously a head of strategic platforms for Google Cloud, where she worked with enterprise customers, helping them grow their businesses through digital transformation initiatives. Please give a warm welcome to Eve.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, and welcome everyone. Oops, let me get my thing. I'm going to move around because I'm Greek and I speak with my hands. So if I'm up in the podium, then I can't speak. And, oh, what is happening? Is this going to explode? No. Okay, we're all safe. It's fine. This was not a drill. So my name is Eve Psalti, and you can see I have an accent. So if you were here for the previous one with Meenakshi, you're getting 2 accents for the price of 1. So that's a good deal. And thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you so much for all being here. I know you had a lot of different options to choose from and a lot of other places to be, and I really appreciate that you're here now. And a little bit about myself before we talk about AI, we define it, we demystify it, we look at a couple of cool things, and hopefully put a thought in your head that if you are using AI now, how you can take it to the next level. And if you're not using, how can you start really evaluating some things that will make your life and your work much easier. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Greece. I moved in the US 27 years ago. And my background, although I do have a computer science degree, I liked what Anne said in the keynote with a T. So although I started my career in the vertical form, thinking that I would code all day, it kind of life took me in a different direction. So I kind of had a more horizontal trajectory, and my background basically is in business, in tech. I did sales, I did marketing, I did business development, partner enablement, licensing. I know. But you got to be open, and you're going to be agile, and you're going to be meandering in mysterious ways. But for the past 25 years, don't do the math, I've been working in startup and larger enterprise high-tech companies, making sure that we develop the right products in the right way to delight our consumers and make things much easier for our customers. So for this one, we're going to talk a little bit about AI. And first of all, I know Anne talked about it, Fernanda touched on it, Meenakshi mentioned it as well, which is kind of like motherhood and apple pie, how technology is changing the way that we live, right? And we all have smartphones or smart watches that count our steps. Probably a lot of you came here with an Uber or a Lyft, or most of you probably, or half of you. How many of you are working remotely from home? Holy smokes. Okay, that's like 90%. So exactly, so technology has really changed the way that we live, that we work, that we perceive the world, and it's all good, right? And what we're seeing from kind of an organizational change is we see that maybe 10 years ago, every company was a software company, right? And we've seen Airbnb, they don't own real estate, but they facilitate this, right? Or Uber, they don't own cars, but they facilitate the service. Or Twitter and communications, well, God knows what's going to happen there now, but let's all hope for the best. So every company is turned and is going into a software company, whether this is actually what they do or it's a means to an end. And now what we see, which is a shift, is that every company is becoming an AI company. And if you think that your group or your organization is not an AI organization, think again. Because hopefully by the end of this, We're going to see how we can introduce AI into areas where we can really drive a difference. We can go to market faster. We can be more competitive. We can be more productive. Our jobs will become a little bit more interesting and not mundane and all of that. And if I don't convince you, then I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm very, very passionate about AI. I've been in the space for about 10, 12 years, and I've seen kind of like the evolution, the great research that has been done in the academic space, in the commercial space, and there are a lot of great opportunities. The reason why all of this is accelerating now in like massive form is because the data that we have is massive. Think about like, you know, your own personal life, right? I mean, you provide your information to your you know, your phone provider, your employer, the grocery store, through, you know, the cards that you have, your credit card company. You provide a lot of information as a consumer, and then organizations have a ton of information about their customers, which is kind of useless if you don't do anything with it. So you need to activate it, and this is where the availability of GPUs, so the high compute power, comes in combination with a plethora of data that we currently have that makes AI really smart. Am I the only one hearing a tickling? Is it me? Oh, dear Lord. OK. I'm going to try not to drive you crazy here. All right. OK. And if you don't believe me, believe all the analysts, right? What they're saying, and I think Anne mentioned it in the morning, and probably you are living it all. These 3 years definitely changed us, right? Fundamentally, in psychological ways and in very pragmatic ways. So basically, we've seen that organizations, and think about their own group or your own company that you work with or that you work in, how things change. You know, will we had the same number of hands when we asked about how many people are remote 3 years from now? I know I didn't have that opportunity, and I worked in organizations that had Teams and Google Meet and all of that and Zoom, and you know, we were probably at the forefront of really adopting this. But now I go to the office maybe like twice a month, and my team is like everywhere, and it doesn't really make sense to go to the office. So anyway, where was I with that? Yeah. So half of the project were accelerated with COVID. And I've seen it with enterprises that I work with, how before, like 3 years ago, we were talking to GM and Twitter and Airbnb and like, you know, a lot of different companies. And they were saying, yeah, we're going to be agile, we're going to do digital transformation, but we're going to get these things done, and then we're going to get into it. Like Anne was saying, like, you know, go innovate in the corner, let us know when you're done, and we'll just do this. So this changed everything, because now half of the initiatives that all organizations have are accelerated. So this change is happening whether we like it or not. And also because of half of the organizations, again, more than half, actually believe that the changes that we experienced in the past 3 years are going to be maintained in the past 20 plus years, right? So it's becoming like a norm and a new way of life and a new way of work. And again, more than half of the employers are really investing, whether it's in tech or AI or areas where they can really automate things and they can accelerate the transformation projects that they're driving. And we've seen this change in a lot of different industries, right? When was the last time you saw your PCP, your doctor? Or how many of you now use telehealth? And you kind of like zoom in with your doctor. The doctor doesn't even want you in their office, to be honest, because every time I call my PCP, it's like, oh yeah, let's do a Zoom. And I'm like, all right. And it's actually great, because I can go do my things, and then I can call in and, you know, have the diagnosis. So It's not like perfect at all times, but I'm saying that now in a very traditional and highly regulated industry like the healthcare one, we see a lot of innovation. With virtual agents, conversational agents. Retail is a huge area of innovation that we see from an AI standpoint. I'm going to give you a demo. We use computer vision, and probably you've seen some of these like self-checkout areas in the grocery stores. The trend there is just to make sure that we can identify produce or things that are not in a packaged way with a QRC code or kind of like a barcode. So basically, how do we really streamline the checkout process? And we see this also in manufacturing. If you look at the Amazon warehouse, I don't know how many of you have been in an Amazon warehouse or in a similar warehouse. There are more robots than humans. And that's a good thing, because this is a repetitive work, it's heavy lifting, it's not really a career-spanning opportunity. So have the robots and kind of like the robotics do the heavy lifting and really elevate the humans to do the critical work. Also with financial services, we see a lot of innovation when it comes to fraud detection, anomaly detection. You really want an algorithm, or you want kind of like the proficiency of an AI system to tell you if there was something wrong in the activity in your bank account, right? Because we humans by design make some mistakes. Okay, so let's define AI. What is? How many of you actually work in AI or evaluating AI projects or have this background? Great, the brave four. I love it. Good. So let's start from the beginning. So what is AI? Basically, it's a way to train a model, a machine based on huge amounts of data to really act like a human. So we want this algorithm, this machine, this AI, the bot, or whatever it is, to really sense, comprehend, and act. Ideally, if we train them in the right way, they will be able to analyze the information that we give them, identify connections, patterns, and make the decision for us. Is it 100% perfect? No, but we are not either. So this is where the human touch comes into place. So, I think there's another thing to that. Whoops, there you go. So sensing, basically, we've seen computer vision. I'm going to show some of the examples. Audio processing. Every time you kind of interact it with, a conversational agent, or what is another one? Sound, speech. Biometrics is a big area here. So basically, again, in a conversational AI scenario, it can identify through your voice who you are, your demographics, your psychographics, information, match it with the information that the organization or the company that you're interacting with has. Comprehend. We're going to take a look at a couple of the examples for natural language processing. So basically, how do you train an AI kind of entity to understand speech, to understand accents, to translate, to convert text to speech, speech to text? And then if everything goes well, how do we really use that to train a machine learning algorithm so that it can make decisions for us and recommendations? A lot of times, probably you have experienced this if you're using kind of Word or word processing kind of system of any vendor, not the one that I represent. But you will see that you're writing a sentence and then it says, "Oh, did you really want to say X, Y, Z?" So this is kind of basically a very simple type of example of how the system can train itself to recommend things that you might not really think about, or that it can really speed up the way that you work. And the actual, where the success metric for AI, like, if someone asks, like, how do we know if it's good or not? The very simple answer is human parity. So basically, you want the AI to speak, understand, act in the same accuracy and the same kind of like natural way that a human would. And this is how we kind of like measure how good or how not good the AI is. A couple of very simple questions that we can answer through kind of like, the AI process is it A or is it B? So classification, right? So you train basically the model, you feed it with a bunch of images, of X-rays, that have, components of like, lung cancer, for example, and it can train. This is like really life-saving. I was looking at the statistic the other day about how many breast exams or mammograms are getting misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. So having this as a preliminary step really truly can save lives. It can make the physician much more really efficient, and it can save you and your family's life. So classification, is it lung cancer, is it not? The other question that it can ask, that it can answer is this weird? So when we talk about anomaly detection, and you can see here, like, which one is different than the others. And then this is like a funny picture, but the reality is, as I said, with your bank account, you really want something really smart and well-trained to let you know it's somebody dipped into your savings account, especially in this macroeconomic environment. Another question that AI can answer is how many, how much, so what we call a regression. So this will be great for you in finance, when you do forecasting, pipeline analysis, or whether you're an analyst, whatever you have to process a lot of information to define really a trend, a trajectory, this is where this thing comes really handy. And then clustering. So how is this organized? And again, like a real type of example from the healthcare industry. You see, like, the different diseases, the customers, so you can really create clusters so that you can analyze the diagnosis, or you can kind of like, create treatments in a more efficient way. And then the final piece is kind of like, what should I do? So that reinforcement learning. So every time that we use it, it learns like a human would. It learns from the mistakes, and it can find really, in this case, kind of like, the optimal treatment policy. And as an example of that, you probably saw Fernanda in the keynote, the CEO and founder of We Global. Disclaimer, I'm in the management team and the board of We Global. But basically, this is an example of how AI really powers even a small startup company and really creates a differentiation and is part of the value prop. Because what We Global does, it's not, it's a bunch of resources for startup, female founders that don't have access to the same funding that other groups might have. But what makes it very different is the algorithm and the AI behind how we really, for lack of a better term, score the founders that are part of the We Global studio. So we look at the founder DNA, we look at the business plan, we look at the pitch, we look at the partnerships, we look at kind of like, the whole end-to-end, not only the business and the financials, but also the psychographics elements of the founder and the management team. And this actually presents a much more robust and end-to-end view of the individual and the company. And it also helps the investors to make a much more sound decision. Okay, enough about my plug for We Global. Let's talk about, like, what do we mean by kind of like all the AI pieces? Because AI can be manifested in multiple ways, right? We can talk about language understanding, translating, text analytics. I'm going to show some of the examples now. Vision, we kind of touched on kind of like computer vision with retail. Speech, you all really experienced in a good or bad way a conversational bot that you might or might not have liked. If done well, it can be a beautiful thing. If done wrong, it's a terrible thing. So yeah, don't blame the AI, okay? And then the decision piece. So just to make it real, oh, and then a bunch of logos, fine. Just to make it real, so on the language side, I can tell you some of the stories that might like really inspire you to do something with AI. So Telefonica is kind of like, you know, a telecom kind of company in Europe. I think they have offices in other places too. But basically, we wanted to really provide an excellent customer interaction that they can have with their customers. So we wanted to make sure we make the agents much more efficient. When someone calls, it's not like a cold call. They know who the customer is, their plan, you know, how long they've been, kind of like what type of issues they might be having. So by the time the person comes into the live agent, the system, you know, has already this information. So the interaction is much more productive, and you know, they can, you know, and both parties can be really satisfied. Also with KPMG, we help them, you know, through the text analytics to kind of find kind of like this anomaly detection, kind of help them answer the question, is this weird? And flag compliance risks. Also, there was another really even more critical example. I want to say it's Allstate. I can't remember. It was an insurance company, and they were trying inherently, they were trying to eliminate bias in the insurances they would allow for certain groups. So there was kind of like, you know, an inherent bias in the system, and the AI kind of like application actually helped them to remove that bias. And then with Volkswagen, they have customers around the world. So basically, they use the translator, which again, it's kind of like you know, an AI application to translate all their manuals in all the different things. And then the translation, just pay attention whenever you pick about things that translate to make sure that it maintains the format. Otherwise, it creates a lot of work for your employees. Something a little bit more on the geeky side, allow me if you can. This is like very cutting edge. We've seen this like, you know, in the last, you know, 2, 3, 5 years. You probably have heard of GPT-3, which is like the whole notion of large language models. So what makes it really interesting, and you don't have to know the ins and outs, it's trained on 175 million parameters, it's very powerful, it's very smart. So the more well-trained it is, the smarter it is. So how we are using it, and I can tell you how Microsoft is using it, and then there are a lot of others. This is still in public preview, so it's not generally available, but you know, I thought I would share it with you because it's really cutting edge, it's super cool, very interesting, and this is becoming mainstream really, really fast. So what you can do with OpenAI, OpenAI is kind of like a startup, a non-profit startup. I think it was created 5 years ago. You might Bing it or Google it or whatever. I can't remember. But they created these very powerful models that basically what they can do is summarize. So you feed them pages and pages of analysis of contracts or whatever, and they spit out a one-page kind of summary. We use it every time we do analyst calls for our earnings, and you know, there are these like massive transcripts of like 4-hour meetings. We feed it through this system, and then it comes up with a one-page executive summary. So really, really cool. Also, what we are doing, and we've seen other companies use it as well, for marketing campaigns. So if you want to connect it to your CRM, and then kind of like, connect it also with something like the database or whatever you have certain offers. It can create a whole marketing plan, kind of like, emails, the whole kind of end-to-end thing. This leaves your marketing team, more time to do other more creative things or focus on the ROI or other elements. So this is like a really interesting. Also, if you're in a developer group, this will be interesting for you. This can be a little bit controversial because some of the die-hard developers are like, oh, I don't want someone to write my code. But if you are running a software company, and then we know that all of the companies now are software companies, and all of the companies will become AI companies, quote me on this, writing kind of like millions and millions of lines of code is just very cumbersome, right? And yes, you can have like, 10,000 developers doing this day and night in a dark room, which they will really, really enjoy. But don't you want to help them, though, be more productive? So the same way you have the autocomplete in an email, this does the same thing for your code. It's really, really life-changing. It will make developers much more productive. They can still review it, QA it. You're still the owner of your own code. Nobody's writing things for you, but it's much, much more efficient. Anyway. The other cool thing, it's in the same kind of like genre, right? Natural language, how are we doing on time? Okay, good. Natural language processing. So this is like really mind-blowing. This is going to change everything. Basically, it's called like, the same thing with GPT-3. This is DALL-E, which what it does basically, it converts text into an image. These are images that didn't really exist in the past, right? So it creates realistic images from a description in a natural language. So basically, you're saying it's midday, harsh overhead sunlight, directional sunlight, photograph of a stylish black man talking animatedly on the phone, mid-shot, outdoors, in LA, harsh overhead sunlight, midday summer. I mean, you can use less words, but whatever. And there is no grammar here, so I don't know what this person was thinking. But the reality is that this image did not really exist in the past. This is crazy, right? Like this other image, long shot, wide shot, full shot, film, still of a woman drinking coffee, walking to work, long shot. Anyway, and this is kind of like you're squinting. Yes? Are you with me? You're like, I don't believe it. This is bad. Okay. I don't want to put you in the spot. It can be really scary, right? And you'll see the controversy. I'm not Pollyanna here saying like, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This can be misused. Everything can be misused, right? And there is a little bit of controversy in the art community because now, we kind of like level the playing field. So more people have tools like this to create art, And what is more valid, an artist that spent like, a week on an oil painting or someone that used 5 words and an exclamation point to create an image? But, again, the art especially is in the eye of the beholder. Don't blame the tool, which is AI. Final last words. Okay, let's move into speech, right? So we talked about language, speech. And this is where it becomes really interesting. I personally worked with Pearson because I was in the education space for a long time. And basically, Pearson is an education company. It helps students with tutoring. So basically, this helped them convert voice from text. So basically, they had the educators kind of annotating things that the students were submitting. And it was creating kind of like a voice over. This created a lot of opportunities for students with learning disabilities, with dyslexia, dysgraphia. Really, really great tool. And it's a great accessibility tool, too. Progressive, I'm going to show you a demo of this. Flow, which is kind of like the brand and the face. You will be surprised that whenever you hear Flo, it's not her voice. We basically worked with Progressive, and we created a custom neural voice. If you train the models over several hours, it will basically create kind of like, your artificial voice. Is this good? Yes, if used in the right way. Can it be very, very bad in the wrong hands? Yes, that's why we need, whenever we introduced AI, we need to make sure we have the right governance, we have the right traceability, so that we can make sure that we maintain kind of like the equity behind the code. And actually what we do for cases like this, especially for the face API, so face recognition and custom neural voice, because it's so kind of like sensitive, if it falls in the wrong hands, we keep track of all the customers that we have that use this and all the use cases. Because again, in the wrong hands, especially in the environment right now, you can use someone's custom neural voice to say XYZ things that are not right or not true or whatever. And then we work with the European Parliament. I'm going to show you a couple of real-life type of things. Maybe it will spark some interest. We talked about human parity, right? Don't worry about the algorithm here. Basically, this is to show you whenever someone talks to you about AI or wants to sell you AI, or they want you to integrate AI in whatever they're doing, this is the first and only question that you should ask. What is the human parity? Because it will show the sophistication and the maturity of the algorithm.
That's about how old ours is.
What did she say? Which one do you think it is? C? Okay. Wow, you're all good. All right, fine.
That's about how old ours is.
So the point here is that you need a system that, especially when we talk about conversational agents or interactions, you want someone to recognize accents, like mine, or intonations, muffled voices, noises from the surroundings. So you want to make sure that it's kind of like, really, it recognizes things in kind of like, the most human-like way. And then what you can do, which is like great, right? You don't have to create your own thing. You can go out in any library and you can pick up a voice. So if you want to build your own bot, if you want to really automate, whether it's something internally for your own organization or directly to your customers and partners, you can go and shop voices, basically. And the voices can be general.
Let me think. She felt disheartened when she was not chosen to be on the school team. I'm so happy to see you.
Depending on what your brand is or what you want to do with it.
I wonder why she said
pensive,
that. Wow.
Funny.
That's so funny.
Bored.
I'm so bored.
Like every teenager on earth. And then you have, what you can do is basically these are 3 different versions. So it's a colleague of mine that recorded her voice. She used to work for CNN, so she has a very beautiful journalistic voice. And then she created a custom neural voice. So the second one that you'll hear is not her voice. It's the trained thing. And then she doesn't speak Chinese, but her custom neural voice does, which is amazing. Think about all the things that you can do, right? You can have someone's voice, and then you can have them speak German or Chinese or Hindu or Urdu, whatever.
A report on those inspections will be sent to the Security Council next week.
So this is her real voice, right? She trained the model, recorded a bunch of hours.
You're very welcome. I hope to see you again soon.
Can you see the difference? Exactly, it's crazy, right?
非常欢迎您，
And now
我
she
希望很
speaks
快能再见到
Chinese.
您。
Crazy. And then again, these are all API access. You can go and shop them around, right? And they're very, very cheap too, because it's so ubiquitous at this point. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And this is our friend Flo. This is the first one is her real voice, and the second one is kind of like we had a little bit of fun, let's say. But they know it, full disclosure, we didn't go beyond the bad, don't sue me, don't come after me, okay?
To report a claim or check up on a
That's her
current
actual
one,
voice.
just log into your account or use the Progressive app.
I mean, you've seen this commercial, unless you were under a rock.
I'm a unicorn-loving, taco-eating #1 insurance fan.
Anyway, I mean, this was like in good faith, but, as I said, in the wrong hands, you can do a lot of bad things. All right. Okay, here is another really, really fascinating thing. You've all been in like a Teams call or a Google Meet or a Zoom. I don't know if Zoom has transcription, but in any case, where you want to keep like a record of your meeting, or every customer care agent needs to have a transcript for liability and traceability reasons. So there is like a huge demand for transcribing things. And actually, I wanted to put that mine, but I forgot, because whenever someone is speaking with an accent, it's really great to transcribe things to make things easier. So I always do it, but I forgot this time. I apologize. But anyway, transcription, there is a huge demand for this. But you have to do it right? Because in this demo, you'll see the person starts in English, and the system says, oh, great, it's English, I'm going to transcribe in English. Then the guy switches into Spanish midway. So without the right AI, it will transcribe the gibberish English because it doesn't recognize that it switched the language. But if you have the right AI, it will understand. That's why I'm saying it's about sensing, comprehending, and acting. Nobody says to the system, oh, now the person switched from English to Spanish. But it does it automatically. And again, this is not evil, right? This is for our own benefit. It saves you a lot of time, and it will delight your customers because they don't have
Thank
to
you for
hear
calling
like a bunch
311
of
Service
garbage.
Center. How may I help you?
Hello. ¿Sí hablas español?
Sí, absolutamente. ¿En qué puedo ayudar?
Oh, genial. Quería pedir ayuda para que quiten la nieve de la entrada.
You can see, you can have really smart AI and really stupid AI. Okay, so that's one. And then, okay, before we go there, this is the example from the European Commission. 2 years ago, when all hell broke loose, we worked with them basically to make sure that we provide all the communication services, the transcription and the translation services for all the EU kind of meetings that they had to combat and create like a unified plan for COVID. And that's kind of like what you see. There are a couple of speakers. They start, there is one speaker in English, so the thing is we'll transcribe in English and translate into another language. Then there is another person speaking in French. There's another person speaking in German. So the system, this is all real time, right? The meeting is happening in the EU, and they're able to communicate without having kind of like, an army of translators. So this is how it looks like.
Dear colleagues, again, not everything went perfect in the last years, but the key decisions were right, together with the governments, together with the parliament, together with the commission.
And they all
I
have
also want to
accents,
say a personal
so
word to
it's
Stella
good to recognize the accent.
She is in the center of the storm currently as our health commissioner. Meine sehr verehrten Kolleginnen und Kollegen, neben der Sicherheit müssen wir jetzt Ambitionen an den Tag legen. Meine Fraktion hat gestern einen 11-Punkte-Plan vorgelegt, wie wir die Produktion schnell anheben können.
C'est pourquoi que nous avons créé une task force pour accroître la production industrielle des vaccins sous l'autorité de Thierry Breton, notre commissaire en charge du marché.
Basically, every organization now, it's so international, and customers, especially when you're into e-commerce or kind of like, whenever you have kind of like a global set of services and products, you need something that, will really represent your brand, and it will create kind of like that visibility and that traceability with your customers and your stakeholders. Another interesting thing that you'll see in a supermarket near you, because this is like near production, is basically how to automate and how to streamline the checkout process. This is like a great way to maximize revenue for a very slim margin type of industry, and it's a great way to get in and out without waiting in line forever. So this is kind of like a way, the challenge was always what happens with the produce. You have to go into the drop-down thing, and then you click bananas, and there are 4 different types of bananas, and then you have to figure out which banana it is. And anyway, It's kind of a trivial product, but you get my gist. It can be like really frustrating. And think about if you have like accessibility needs. You know, I'm blind, so I have to like, you know, put my glasses and then where are my glasses? I mean, it's kind of like a nightmare. So this one accurately not only thinks that, oh, it's an apple, but it's the specific type of apple, right? There is no barcode, there is no QRG code. This is, you know, really, really simple. It helps really well with produce, with fruits and vegetables. We're piloting now in several grocery stores around the US and in Europe. You'll find it probably in the next months. And I hope it will make your life easier, because it certainly will mine. Anyway, so that's kind of cool in a geeky way. But in a more serious note, I talked about kind of like how AI can really level the playing field for anyone with accessibility needs, which is part of kind of like, you know, how do we create equity for all? And this is really an exciting thing that, again, we're going to see more and more. These are kind of like some of the things that we see now in pilot forms or in partnerships. You know, you really need to pay attention in all this, because if you are not really doing anything with AI right now, you will be in a disadvantage because everyone else is. So this is a really great kind of like collaboration between, you know, the company that I represent, but again, interchange the name with another. But the real cool thing is that basically now we provided, the company. Halion. Basically, it's kind of like a consumer packaged good. So they have the vitamins, the emergency, they have Sensodyne and other products. So they're using this system based on kind of like computer vision, translating the vision into voice so that they can read out the ingredients and the description in the box. So when someone, you know, that is kind of like, you know, vision impaired, visually impaired, they can really kind of like have the experience that we all have in the grocery store. And you'll see more and more of this come up. Cool. Another really cool thing, do I have time? Yes. Another cool thing that I think all of you should probably kind of like be using, or at least kind of like looking around, is the document process automation. You probably heard like document AI, forms recognizer. All of you, I bet, have like a bunch of papers, whether it's contracts, whether it's documents, invoices, and you have probably an army of poor people that are kind of like leafing through and, you know, plowing through to make sense of that. This is a very easy way, very cost-effective way to scan all of these things that you have. We worked with companies, and I'm going to show you, that had handwritten scribbles that we were able to extract. So basically, the system takes an image and it extracts the values that you need to pay attention to, like first name, last name, date, amount, invoice, whatever the things that you want to track. And you can still have your humans doing an amazing job, but they don't have to do the mundane thing of plowing through 10,000 documents. This is a great way to kind of tailor it to what you need to do, save a bunch of time, really cost effective. Just for fun, we worked with I personally worked with a couple of folks. NHS, the National Health System in the UK, before they went down. So basically they had a bunch of prescriptions that they wanted to process for insurance claims. And some of them were, physician scribbles, which we all know it's the worst. They won't give you a degree if you have like a proper handwriting. So we were able to do they call it like structured or unstructured content. But basically, you feed whatever you have to this thing. It takes an image, extracts the key values, and then you can process and do whatever you need to do with it. And then some of the other examples here. Accenture, the same thing. They had a bunch of invoices. They had 10,000 people that now that they are they didn't fire the people, but they are realigning them with other areas where they can be more productive, they can be happier, and they won't be looking at 10,000 documents every day. So it's a really good way to drive the efficiencies at the organizational level, but also to create better quality for the employees. And then I want to end with one kind of again, cutting edge thing that we'll see more and more. And I can preface it because it might sound like, oh, so what? So basically, it's a video. And the AI system is understanding the movements and what's happening in the video. So there are the video analytics. So it sees kind of how things move, and it understands it as a human would, not as a static image, but as a continuum kind of form of things move around. And then we have an avatar, so it's not a real person, but an avatar of one of our researchers that is using the text to speech. So it reads the text from the video, and it kind of transcribes it, and it reads it out loud. There are a lot of different ways that we can use it in an organizational way, and kind of a lifestyle, but I want to show you exactly, kind of things that are in research now, and I think it will change kind of the way that we work and we live. So you'll see this, it's a bunch of rhinos, somewhere in Africa, I presume, and there are a lot of things happening, right? So now we have the video analytics. Is this coming? Okay, so as things change, this is real time. This is real time. The system understands what is going on, who is going where, and it's creating a description of the image. And then you have the avatar, who is actually
this scene takes place in the Kruger National Park,
what is
where
happening
a
on the
is walking
screen.
down a
So you
dirt
have
road
no
next to a
humans.
safari truck. In this scene, a rhino is walking down a dirt road next to a vehicle. The man
Again,
in the safari
all of this
vehicle
is happening,
driving next
zero
to the rhino.
human interaction. It's kind of crazy, I know. So all of that, I know my time is up, but I will love your questions, your objections, your fears. I'm really a true believer that this is going to be a game changer. If you're not really considering, please do. Read about it, ask the questions. It will make you happier. It will make you much more efficient. The only challenge that I see with AI is that we make it that smart that it understands that it's doing the mundane tasks, and then we are in trouble, and that's the only reason. So thank you so much, and I'd love your questions.